Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the top 11 best decks in Hearthstone after return to Naxxramas mini set. The first couple of days after return to Naxxramas, they looked pretty scary because Evolved Shaman was doing so incredibly well. However, the meta always finds a way, right? Well, at least given that Evolved Shaman got a nerf on Friday because the bug that allowed them to discover Colossals, so to discover Neptulon, was fixed, and now the Null and Placing Transmutation combo lost some of its power, which means that Evolved Shaman won't be able to blow out the games quite as well as it used to. It still can, but it just lost a bunch of that consistency. And that in turn opened up new space for some of the decks that were already able to challenge Evolved Shaman, and now the meta looks a little bit different. So first of all, at number 11 we have Quest Priest. Yes, Quest Priest is back in the meta, because Quest Priest has great matchup against Evolved Shaman, against Unholy Death Knight, and also against Blood Death Knight, which is often used as a counter to Evolved Shaman and Unholy Death Knight, so Quest Priest counters all of those. However, Quest Priest also has a long list of weaknesses, which means that, yeah, Quest Priest might be in the meta, but I'm not sure if it's going to be in the meta for the long term, and it definitely has its share of problems as well. And coming in at number 10 is the good old Imp Warlock. Well, not quite the good old Imp Warlock, because there is one new miniset card in this list, and that is Nothing's Impossible, just giving it even stickier boards, allowing it to challenge slow controlish decks even better. Imp Warlock, despite that, still has weaknesses, especially some of those Death Knight decks are really strong, and Evolved Shaman, yeah, Evolved Shaman is still a strong deck, despite Friday's small nerf to the Evolve pool. It can still just win games on the spot, and Imp Warlock doesn't have too many tools to prevent that. But overall, Imp Warlock is still capable of winning more than half of its games on the ladder, and, well, that's what it takes to climb. The return to Naxxramas miniset did have a major impact on the meta, and also a major impact on the deck lists. Actually, this Spell Demon Hunter list is one of the very few decks that have not changed at all with the miniset. Spell Demon Hunter, ever since the quest got nerfed, quest was dropped out of Spell Demon Hunter. After that, they have been playing this build with Jace and Artificer Cymox with those relics. It's still okay. It's one of the more balanced decks in the meta. It doesn't have a lot of great matchups, like Blood Death Knight is probably the best matchup it has on the ladder. It doesn't have a ton of weaknesses, but the one clear weakness that it does have is a pretty bad one to have, because it's Evolved Shaman, and Evolved Shaman is still the most popular deck in the game, so yeah, that's kind of a problem, Spell Demon Hunter. But otherwise, if you like playing a deck that pretty much always has a chance, then Spell Demon Hunter is one option for you. And the second deck that has not changed at all with the miniset is at number 8, and that's Curse Imp Warlock. Curse Imp Warlock, basically Curse Imp Warlock's role in the meta right now is to lose to some of the very best aggressive decks in the game, like Unholy Death Knight, Frost Death Knight, and Evolved Shaman, and destroy the decks that are trying to counter those decks. So Curse Imp Warlock is, I guess, the evil in this meta. Strong against all of these slower decks that are trying to counter Evolved Shaman and its friends, and weak against Evolved Shaman itself. But it still plays a role. Very rock, paper, scissory, this one, but still has a role in the meta. And at number 7 we have an interesting returnee to the list, because it's been a while since Ping Mage was one of the best decks in the game. But right now Ping Mage, because Ping Mage has great matchup against Evolved Shaman. With solid alibi, Ping Mage can stall. Ping Mage is able to stall the game a lot, and then eventually Ping Mage will have that Warden, will have that Magister Dawn Grasp, will have that Mordor's Fire Eye. So just stalling until it can deal damage, and then it can clear Shaman boards, it can just beat up on Shaman. Very powerful deck for this specific matchup. Although it does have its weaknesses as well. Notably, the weakness to Frost Death Knight is going to be a problem in the future, because Frost Death Knight numbers are rising, and then it also loses in the Mage Mirror against Big Spell Mage. And speaking of Big Spell Mage is the third deck that has not changed by a single card. Big Spell Mage just has been wonderful throughout this expansion. It's almost completely going to rotate out when the next expansion comes, so there's not much of long-term prospects for this archetype. but if you enjoy playing it, then it's still a good choice. At number 5 we have Dragon Paladin. Control Paladin is now weaker than its Dragon variant, so I'm recommending to play the Dragon version. And Dragon version has strengths against Evolved Shaman, against Ping Mage, some good matchups there, but also some annoying weaknesses, especially against Frost Death Knight and Curse Imp Warlock. But still a deck that can equality away big minions early in the game is in a pretty decent spot in the current meta. Many of the top ranks are dominated by Death Knight decks, and actually the weakest Death Knight archetype at the moment is Unholy Death Knight. That's a bit of a surprise. Unholy Death Knight still a strong deck, still able to be aggressive. Foul Egg, Construct Quarter, that excellent duo has really lifted Unholy Death Knight into top tiers, and it's doing fine. And at number 3 we have currently the most popular deck in the game, which is Evolved Shaman. Evolved Shaman, Goldshire Knoll, placing Transmutation on the Goldshire Knoll. You used to want to discover either Thaddeus or Neptune the Tidehunter from that, but on Friday there was a hotfix that removed Neptune the Tidehunter from the pool, so now you can only get Thaddeus. Well, there's still a couple of other decent minions there as well. There are no real bad targets at 10 mana pool, but still not as game winning as Neptune is. And while Evolved Shaman has some great matchups, and it's reasonably good against both Unholy Death Knight and Frost Death Knight as well, the nerf to its Discover pool did make its bad matchups a little bit more pronounced and made it so that it's now clearly beatable by these slower control decks that just are able to withstand the initial assault and run Evolved Shaman out of resources. And as it happens, in this polarized meta, Blood Death Knight finally looks good. And Blood Death Knight with Prince Renatal. Because once you have Prince Renatal in, you have that little bit of extra health, which means that those Frost Death Knights, which are trying to burn you down, they just might not have enough damage to actually beat you. And Blood Death Knight, strongest Evolved Shaman, strongest Unholy Death Knight, obviously has its weaknesses, most notably Curse Imp Warlock, which just feasts on all of these slow decks. But this is the best Blood Death Knight has been throughout the expansion. Blood Death Knight has been relatively popular the whole time, people have just wanted to play it, but it has not been as good. However, now, in this meta, for at least a little while, Blood Death Knight looks pretty solid. But the number one deck at the moment is Frost Death Knight. And it's not the old Frost Death Knight with all of the burn spells, it's a newer variant. This list currently looks like the best one. It has re-added some of the burn, because Howling Blasts have made a comeback. But other than that, it's an aggro deck with a bunch of minions, getting on the board early, using that Construct Quarter on your Foul Egg, running Marrow Manipulators, having Frostworm's Fury, and almost guaranteed to have Frostworm Fury by 7, so that you will be able to freeze the opponent's board and use your own minions freely and deal more damage. Bunch of great matchups for this deck, and right now Frost Death Knight doesn't have any weaknesses. This deck list does not have a single matchup that would be unfavored. Evolved Shaman used to be one, until Friday evening. On Friday evening, the Evolved Shaman matchup went roughly 50-50. Before that, Evolved Shaman was somewhat favored. So right now, we have suddenly went from an Evolved Shaman dominated meta into a Frost Death Knight dominated meta, with Evolved Shaman still doing pretty good even after the nerf. So yeah, I fully expect that we're going to see some changes to Construct Quarter, we're going to see some more changes to Evolved Shaman soon, and we'll see what the meta is going to look like after that. Right now we have a bunch of these very slow control decks that are in top tier ranks, which has not happened before in this expansion, and once things are a little bit less polarized, I expect that those control decks will also suffer as a result. Another notable feature of this current meta is that there are no Hunter decks as part of top decks. Shockspeeder Hunter just a little bit too weak in the current meta, and Beast Hunter. K9 became a mech beast instead of being just a mech, and adding that beast tag to K9 just wrecked Beast Hunter's early game, and that has really caused some drastic effects for the deck. Actually killing the deck, at least for the time being, but maybe it can still be reinvented. Anyway, right now, Frost Death Knight doing great, Blood Death Knight doing great, Evolved Shaman still doing really well. Just a bunch of really powerful decks in the meta. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.